Morning, guys. So we're here, and it is currently 7:03 on Saturday morning, and I'm going to be talking about the second day that Andrea Pitt talked or led the lecture time, and yeah, that was on October 4th. Um, she focused heavily on what we call readily obedience, um, being ready to be obedient to God right away. Um, so the story she brought up first was of Abram, and the Lord spoke to Abram in Genesis 12 and asked Abram to leave his land. She said, "Pack up all your bags and left." Um, and the Lord didn't tell him where to go; just said go. And so Abram packed up his bags and he left. But the thing she brought to our attention is the fact that it was immediate. Or immediate in the Bible, like what was written. There wasn't any questions asked. There wasn't any discussion. For example, Moses, when God showed up to him in the burning bush, had discussion, was like, "Lord, I can't go. I can't be sent." And the Lord actually became frustrated and angry with him. He's finally like, "What about your was it cousin? What about Aaron? What about him? Just he'll talk for you. Take him along." Um, but with Abram, he went immediately. I have here my notes that we aren't just looking at Abram, but those around him. They trusted God through Abram. Like the fact that somebody says, "Okay, guys, so I just got a message from the Lord that we're supposed to pack up everything we have and leave." And everybody's like, "Oh, okay, I guess. I mean, that's hard, but where are we going?" "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I don't know. I guess we'll find out later." I know for me that would be insanely hard if somebody said, "Pack up and leave." Uh, so yeah. Um, so the question that she addressed out of that is, "Are you ready to go?" And of course, everybody's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." And then the next question was, "Really? Are you really ready to go?" Um, and I think it was interesting for me because the fact of being ready to go, I'm always ready to go. Like, I really don't have ties anywhere that, like, if the Lord calls me someplace, I don't feel like I need to be like, "Lord, I have this here, I have to do this." Sorry. But it's more so of I'm just ready to go. I just want to go. But yeah, I have family, yeah, I have friends, but it's more of a fact of just being, I don't know, I'm anxious for something new, for something different. And so for me, listening to the Lord isn't hard. What's hard is the repercussions of listening to Him. For example, coming here, I had a friend that it was really hard for her, just the fact that I was leaving. And still texts me every single day almost, and every single weekend, and tries to ask if we can Skype every single weekend. And like, I always feel like other people are kind of anchoring me down, which I'll get to later. But so from there we went into a long list of people who listened to God immediately. We had Jacob, we had Noah building the ark, we had Hosea marrying his wife, we had Moses, which I'm kind of confused about because Exodus 14, let's look that one up. Depends what part of Moses' life, because there's different parts where he would have listened. Exodus 14, and then other parts where he wouldn't have listened. Okay. Okay. Uh, so it's when Moses would have picked up his staff and raised it over the Red Sea. That would have been readily obedience. But like I said before, the start of his ministry, he was not readily obedient. We have Noah bringing the animals on board the ark. In Joshua 1, we have Joshua, Ezekiel 37, 47, Ezekiel. Matthew 9, paralyzed man, pick up your mat. Matthew 1, Joseph, the father of Christ, when the angel tells him to go and marry Mary. Mark 16, disciples to go out into all the world. And Daniel 10 with Daniel. And Matthew 14 with Jesus walking on the water, which we stopped and we focusing on the fact of what Peter did and what made it so significant. So in Matthew chapter 14, I'm going to turn and read it to you guys. We have the story of Peter walking on the water. Well, it's Jesus walking on the water, but Peter was called and came out. And Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 22. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was there. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from the land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it is really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret, where the people recognized Jesus. The news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area, and soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. So often we focus on Peter's doubt of once he got out of the boat and started sinking. But what Andrea focused on was Peter's faith and his readily obedience. Just the fact that when Christ told him to get out of the boat, he did, and he stepped out. And like a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, he stepped out into the waves and stuff," but like if you think about it, these were massive waves. Like it says they were fighting heavy waves. And depending what kind of boat it is, you probably can't just step off the boat. Like you have to climb up over the side and then jump down into the water. And the fact that he was able to do that and then walk in the waves some, still on top of the water, and then he began to sink. Like he was readily faithful. And then Andrea kind of went into the fact that he knew Christ's voice. And so his focus wasn't on, "Oh, I get to walk in the water," but he knew it was God calling. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm yelling. And so he came out and he went. And he was faithful in that sense. But then the doubt of everything around him is what happened. He started seeing the waves, seeing what was coming at him. And so he became distracted from God, from Christ. He became enthralled in what his situation was, which so often we can do. It's so easy for us to, oh, okay, God, you want me to do this? So you start doing it, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, this is too hard, or I don't really like this anymore, or God, I don't know if I like that, and so it switches and becomes something else that you're consumed by. Um, do I really know God's voice? Was kind of one of the questions phrased, which she came back to later on in some of the other lectures. Um, but she said this, and I quote: "We must know God's voice for relationship's sake. Um, God is a communicator. You need to communicate in order to have a relationship." Um, kind of focusing on the fact that our relationship with Christ comes out of our communication with Him, out of knowing our voice, or knowing His voice. Sorry. And when we're able to do that, we can focus on Him so much more. Going on, Genesis 16, we focused on Hagar and Sarah and Abram, or Sarai, and how the Lord promised them a baby, but they kind of took it into their own hands, and they said, well, they took Hagar, and Sarai gave Hagar to Abram to become pregnant. Like, the Lord had promised that Abram would be the father of a great nation, and so Sarai didn't believe, and Abram didn't believe that they could, through their marriage, through their joining together, and even if they don't say that, that is at least some of the root that took place, because you can't fully believe Christ and then not do what He asks to. And so the Lord is faithful, but we create confusion when we take it into our own hands, when we listen to a voice other than His. The Lord will be faithful no matter the situation, but if we try to take things into our own hands and say, no, God, you fit into my plans. Like, I think I know what I'm doing. It creates confusion, and it becomes really hard and really strange. Trust, faith, and obedience is key, is one of the things we wrote down. And how true that is. How many times do I take it into my own hands? Do I make it my own, and then in some sort of way expect God to be there? An example is my ministry at Black Rock. During that time, I don't ask God, do you want me here? God, is this where you want me to serve? Yes, I served there and loved the ministry and was able to make a difference there. But was I asking God what was His intention? Was I asking Him what He desired, or did I just go and do it because that's what I did the years before? And so now I'm starting to get this fact of making everything else new. Like, God is a part of my life. God is controlling my life. And if that's the case, then I gotta listen to Him. Like, I have to know His voice. It's kind of went on from there. One of the last things we talked about was God's love language. He's a communicator. So how does He communicate through His love languages? And we focused on body language, service, quality time, listening, and physical touch. And she posed this question, which is where we ended. But it says, how have you experienced these in a communication with the Lord? And asked us to think about that for the next day. So I'll talk about my response for the next day in the next video. But the truth of what God asks you to do lies in obedience. Kind of the ending statement for today. Thanks.